Do you know what will happen after you die? You're going to die in the ground. Hilary Swank held up her second Oscar on stage in 2005. She told her husband she loved him and thanked him. After a year, they were getting a divorce. But that wasn't the only thing that was breaking. After those wins, her biggest movies lost a lot of money. She kept her body's fight a secret from everyone. She won 2 golden statues, but now the business world doesn't know what to do with her? What really happened to the woman who used to look like she couldn't be stopped? The answer has to do with hospital rooms, insurance claims being turned down, and a pattern that no one saw coming. Hilary Swank was born on July 30, 1974, in Lincoln, Nebraska. Her family moved around a lot before they came to live in Bellingham. She lived in a small trailer park near Lake Samish by the time she was 6 years old. Every day could be hard there. The trailer park was far from the city, and it was easy for other people to see how hard things were for her inside her home. She has talked about how she learned about the hurt of classism early in life. People at school took their kids away from her when they found out she lived in a trailer. No more invitations. There were no more play plans. She slowly came to understand that where you slept could tell people a lot about your worth. She learned a hard lesson that changed the way she saw the world. It made her more aware, alert, and sensitive to the subtle ways that society divides people. That time in her life kept pulling her inward. Parents of her friends didn't want her to be around. While she stayed home, she pretended not to mind as she watched her friends go to dinners and birthday parties. She knew she was different because of where she lived when she was only 7 years old. Being alone after that hurt a lot, but it also sparked something inside her. Books and movies were safe for her because they never judged her. They told her hello. She got lost in stories where people were hurting and had to fight their way out of bad situations. She felt a little more like the person she wanted to become every time she read a book or watched a movie. She used that escape as fuel to get through the things that hurt her the most. At the same time, things were not calm in her home. Stephen and Judy, her parents, were always trying to figure out how to pay their bills and avoid fights. Stephen took a lot of jobs, but money was always tight. Things kept getting worse in the house, and by the time Hilary was 15, the marriage was over. The split made her and her mom do something that they both knew was risky but had to be done. They left Washington in 1990 with only $75 and one gas station credit card. They only had a dream and each other to fall back on. The car they drove became their first home when they got to Los Angeles. They slept there for weeks while Judy looked for work. As Hilary went from audition to audition, she tried not to feel bad about using public bathrooms to shower or wearing clothes she had stolen. She was old enough to know that things were getting worse for them, but she kept going. Because she thought it would affect her future. She had always used books and movies as a way to relax, but somehow they turned into her calling. The figures she liked had parts of herself in them. She thought the stories she read could lead to something. It stopped being a childhood dream for her to be an actress and became a path she felt drawn to. She said reading stories helped her feel less alone. They made her want to join them because of this. Her love for this subject grew until it lit up her whole life. It was the only thing that felt safe for her when everything else was shaking. The theater quickly became a safe place for her. When she moved to Bellingham, the theater community welcomed her. It was the first place where she didn't feel judged because of her past. She became a member of the Bellingham Theater Guild and started acting in plays at school and in the community. She played Mowgli in The Jungle Book for the first time when she was 9 years old. She felt connected to the excitement, lights, and cheers right away. She felt like she belonged on stage in a way she had never felt before. It made her feel better about herself, and each show made her feel even better. These early years changed her spirit and gave her hope that maybe there was still a place for her in the world. She knew she had to do something bigger when she was 15. After her second year of high school, she quit and moved to Los Angeles with her mother. It felt more like a blind jump than a well-thought-out move. They drove thousands of miles with everything they owned in the Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme because Hilary would have to give up all of her dreams if she went back. She later said that she knew how big the risk was even though she was that young. She wasn't just driven by desire. She didn't want to miss her one chance. The car that carried their dreams also gave them a place to stay. Their trip from Washington to California took them through rest stops and quiet streets in Los Angeles, where they slept in an old car. There were some scary nights. Some of them felt surprisingly free. There was no one waiting for them, no one they knew, and no safety net. They stayed close and helped each other through everything, even though every day brought a new problem. They lived in their cars for weeks, did their laundry in public bathrooms, and tried to look nice for interviews even though they were tired. When they could, they slept on an air cushion in a house that their new friends had just cleaned out. Even though it didn't last long, the few nights we had a roof over our heads felt like little blessings. Things started to change after a month. They were able to rent a room from a single mother in Burbank because Judy got a job as a secretary. That little room made me feel like I had won a big battle. They didn't really feel stable, but it gave them a place to start. Hilary quickly started getting small parts on TV. Each job didn't pay much, but it made her feel like she could make progress. She often talked about how this time in her life taught her to value every little thing because she knew what it was like to have nothing. During all of these times, she slowly learned to be thankful. She never forgot the nights she spent in the car, trying not to eat because she was hungry. She knew how important it was to have a warm meal and a quiet place to be. She said many times that the hard times in her childhood and early years in Los Angeles made her strong. No matter how far she got, they made her think outside the box, work harder, and stay grounded. She says that her mother got her through the worst times and gave her the boost of confidence she needed when she felt weak. Her problems at work didn't go away even as she got better. In 1990, when she was 16, she and Judy were still living in their car when they started looking for managers. Because they didn't have any other money, they used payphones to talk. After a lot of hard work, Judy was able to set up a meeting with Bonnie Litka, the agent who had found Leonardo DiCaprio. Swank signed with her, which gave her hope again. But Hollywood wasn't quick to let people in. She was always being turned down. There were times when she tried out for big parts, but they went to artists who already had a name. To get by, she took small parts that weren't acknowledged. She quickly learned that in Hollywood, to stay alive, you had to be happy with small wins and hold on to them tight. In 1992, she had her first big movie part in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. She played a small part called Kimberly Hanna. The movie came in at number 5 at the North American box office, making $4.5 million in its first weekend and more than $14 million in total. The reviews were mixed. It was funny to them, but they didn't remember it. The movie didn't change her career, but it put her in a world that would become famous after the TV show came out years later. There wasn't a big step forward, but it did help her get there. At about the same time, she kept showing up on hit TV shows like Growing Pains, Harry and the Hendersons, and Evening Shade. People didn't notice these small tasks, but they kept her busy. She played a main character on Camp Wilder from 1992 to 1993 in a part that came up quite often. She took every job, even though the pay wasn't great, because it kept her close to the field she was trying to get into. She said she was happy to work because acting was the only thing that made her happy. She finally got the lead part in the next Karate Kid movie in 1994. She played Julie Pierce, who was new to Mr. Miyagi's class. On paper, the movie looked like it would be a hit, but audiences didn't react the way the studio had planned. It only made $8.75 million in the US and just under $16 million around the world, making it the franchise's worst-performing movie. Some people said it was weak and boring. Some people liked Hilary's act, but the failure of the movie slowed her down again. After the fact, she said that it taught her to be more careful about the parts she picked. She was in a few small movies in the late 1990s, such as Heartwood and Quiet Days in Hollywood. Both flicks didn't get much attention. Heartwood was a story about a small town that didn't get many good reviews. She was married to Chad Lowe at the time of Quiet Days in Hollywood, and was called out for moving too slowly and having uneven results. However, neither movie helped her career. Instead, they both showed her what kinds of parts she didn't want to play. She understood she needed more than just jobs that paid the bills. She needed projects that spoke to her. If Hilary Swank watched Beverly Hills 90210 in 1998, she thought she had finally found a stable place to live. She agreed to play Carly Reynolds in season 8. A single mother who worked hard as a waitress and slowly became involved with Steve Sanders. She believed the promise because she knew it would last for 2 years. And for a young actress looking to get into TV, that meant stability, attention, and a place to grow. But her character was quietly written out after only 16 episodes and sent to Montana with her child, as if she had never been there. She wasn't ready for how hard it hit her. She later said that the breakup broke her heart and made her question whether she even belonged in Hollywood. The worst part was that the show wasn't as good as it used to be. Even though the ratings were low, she was still cut, which made her doubt her skills even more. Over time, people inside the show made it clear that Hilary wasn't the issue. Jenny Garth and Tori Spelling both said that the writing had failed them. Carly Reynolds was presented as too intense and sometimes off-putting, and the scripts never gave her the depth or warmth that makes people care about her. The story didn't make people want to connect with her, so they didn't. Producer Amy also spoke up to support Hilary, saying she was very talented and that the problems with the characters were due to poor development, not really anything else. Not good playing. It reminded me that even a great actor can fail if the script doesn't support them, and that a character's success often rests on what they say before the camera rolls. Hilary began to question herself after all of this. If she wasn't good enough for a show that was ending, she might not be good enough at all. She even thought about quitting acting. But just 2 months later, she saw something she didn't expect. She got a tryout for Boys Don't Cry and got the part of Brandentina, which changed everything. She had never seen or done anything like the movie before, but she knew she had to give it a shot. It was a beautiful lesson to her that some doors closed when she looked back at her firing from 9-0-2-10. So better ones can come along, even if it hurts at the time. That twist did more than just keep her job. It led her to the most important thing she had ever done. She had to do more work to get ready for Boys Don't Cry than she had ever done before. Director Kimberly Pierce took Hilary to a barbershop after she was hired and watched as her long blonde hair was cut off and dyed chestnut brown. When she got home, Chad Lowe, her husband, barely knew who she was. That was just the start. She lived like a man for almost a month. It was like she was a boy in public. Every morning, she put a sock in her pants, put stress bandages on her chest, and spoke more quietly. She changed how she walked and put on men's clothes. She also read court records and books about transgender identity to find out what's going on inside Brandon. She pushed herself so far that she thought she had lost parts of Hilary and didn't know if she would ever find them again. The change was deep, real, and different from anything else people had seen her do. Critics were shocked when Boys Don't Cry came out on October 8, 1999. At the time, popular movies didn't often deal with these kinds of topics. The film's honesty about violence and identity struck people in a way that felt new. Some reviewers said Hilary's show was one of the most powerful ones they had ever seen. This applause seemed unreal because she had only a few small roles before this, like in The Next Karate Kid, and she had just been fired from a teen drama. Out of nowhere, she found herself in the middle of a movie that would become a landmark in LGBTQ+ film. Her work moved people to tears, made them stop and think long after the movie was over. She became so much a part of Brandon's life that people forgot she was playing. Then came the night that Hollywood didn't see coming. In 2000, Hilary Swank won Best Actress at the 72nd award show. Annette Bening was the favorite to win because she had won so many awards for American Beauty, which was the best movie of the year. No one thought Hilary would win the Oscar. Still, not many people knew who she was. She was a young actress whose biggest parts had been in a failed TV series and one big movie. Everyone shocked by her win. People talked about how she changed. Her promise, and the personal truth she told Brandentina. It was one of the biggest upsets in the history of the Oscars, and it opened up a new stage in her life that she had never thought she'd reach before. But the night also had something painful in it. She took the stage on March 26, 2000, to take her award. She had just 30 seconds to say something. While she was stressed and rushed, she thanked her parents, her manager, her co-stars, and the directors. But she forgot to thank her husband Chad Lowe, who had been there for her through all of her problems and even moved to Omaha with her while the movie was being made. She knew what had happened as soon as she left the stage. With fear on her face, Chad saw that she had forgotten the one person who had been by her side through everything. The look was caught on camera, and the news quickly spread through Hollywood. Headlines calling her historic win a snub drowned it out, and she felt terrible because she knew how much Chad had given up for her success. It felt slow and heavy on the way home after the Oscars. Before she even spoke, Chad tried to make her feel better. He told her she didn't have to thank him in public because she had already done that behind closed doors. He wasn't hurt. He wasn't hurt by it. But he could see how much the mistake hurt her. She told him she was sorry over and over, wishing she could change the past. Afterward, Chad said on a show that he felt bad for her and wished he could shield her from all the stress. Still, the media kept pushing the story, and the attention made their marriage worse. Everyone talked more about the words she didn't say than the act that won her the award. They tried to move on, but the stress stayed with them and grew over the years. It was one of many reasons they got a divorce in 2007. The noise never really died down. Talk shows and tabloids didn't celebrate her win. Instead, they focused on the Miss Thank You, making a sweet mistake into a public joke that will last for a long time. In the end, Chad said that he had always thought she had thanked him enough behind closed doors. And the rule that people had to thank their wives in public was more of a tradition than anything important. But for Hilary, the shame stayed with her. She thought about the story a lot for years, and it reminded her of how fame can make a small event much bigger than it should have been. It hung over her marriage and put more stress on a relationship that was already at the center of attention. That event taught her that the line between success and attention is thin, and that even the brightest nights can have a shadow that takes time to shake off. Hilary Swank looked like she had something to prove when she walked into her $1 million baby training. From the moment she began, she never stopped. She went to Gleason's gym in New York every morning. The same spot where Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson made their names in boxing. She worked hard for almost 5 hours straight. There was about 2.5 hours of fighting first. She practiced footwork, jumped rope, and hit the bag over and over again until she was drenched in sweat. She worked out with weights for another hour and a half after that. To get stronger, she did push-ups, pull-ups, and even pushed her own SUV across a parking lot. Her body changed every day. Every day, she ate about 4,000 calories. About 210 grams of protein and 60 egg whites a day helped her gain weight. She went from 108 pounds to 131 pounds over time. Because she didn't want to break the rhythm she had built, she hid the fact that she had a dangerous staph infection from blisters on her feet at one point. After the training was over, her teachers said she looked like a beautifully sculpted Greek statue. But by that time, she was already deeply into Maggie Fitzgerald's skin. The hard work paid off in a way that got her right into the 2005 Oscars. The award was given to her at the Kodak Theater in Los Angeles on February 27 for Second Best Actor. In the 21st century, she was the first woman to do that. She was only 30 years old. Bette Davis, Olivia de Havilland, Vivien Leigh, and Ingrid Bergman were already on the list, and now she was added. This is something that most artists can only dream of. She thanked Annette Bening, Imelda Staunton, Catalina Sandino Moreno, and Kate Winslet for letting her stand next to them. She then looked at her husband and told him she loved him very much. It sounded like but life outside of the stage wasn't as loud as the cheers in that theater. Soon, the cracks in her marriage to Chad Lowe got bigger. They had been married since 1997 and were together through all of her early years of stress. But in January 2006, just a year after she won her second Oscar, they split up. The split was known to everyone by May. She later talked about how hard it had been for her to deal with his drug use and how she had tried to keep everything together. Even though he said he wasn't jealous of her success, he had lost interest in his own work, and the mismatch made it hard for both of them to ignore. She had some of her proudest business moments right next to some of her most painful personal ones. Fans were shocked because they seemed to go together so well. That strange pattern kept happening over and over. Every time she hit a new high point, something heavy pulled at her life from the background. Her relationship began to shake after Boys Don't Cry came out in 2000. And it fell apart totally after $1 Million Baby in 2005. Later, she said, she tried everything to save the marriage, but nothing healed the wounds that were there. She won awards in front of millions of people while going through a broken heart behind closed doors. As her work went on, the contrast became even more clear. There were high hopes for her next big movie, The Black Dahlia, which came out in 2006. She had just won 2 Oscars. The movie came out on September 15 and cost $15 million to make. Over the course of its run, it made a total of $49.3 million, including $10 million in its first weekend. There was a mistake in the math. Many people had a hard time connecting with her character, even though they thought it looked beautiful. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a score of 23%. The movie quickly lost popularity. She couldn't hide her sadness after having gained so much energy. Next was The Core, which came out in 2003. It was a little earlier in her career, but it still fit the same trend. It took $85 million to make but only made $74 million around the world. Some people said it wasn't possible and even made them laugh. Her role as a geophysicist didn't work out the way the company had hoped. It showed Hollywood that big costs don't matter if the story doesn't keep people interested. The next movie was Amelia, which came out in 2009 and had a lot of potential. With a $40 million budget, a well-known director like Mira Nair, and stars like Richard Gere and Ewan McGregor, it was based on the life of Amelia Earhart. But when it only made $3.9 million in its first weekend, people quickly lost hope. The movie made a total of $19.6 million around the world. Not many people liked it, 19%, they said it was cold and expected. As people left, they didn't feel anything, and the sadness got worse because everyone had such high hopes. It wasn't even The Reaping in 2007 that could break her out of the routine. About $40 million was spent on the movie, and it made $62.7 million around the world. 10 million people saw it in its first weekend, but that number dropped quickly. It was called obvious by critics, and people didn't connect with it. Some people liked how she played the part, but the movie itself wasn't strong enough. And the result added to the idea that she had trouble getting people when she wasn't in serious dramas. Hollywood started to see her in a very limited way. Because she won 2 Oscars, she was a well-known performer. But it also held her back. She was honest about this and said that no one knew what to hire her for. She kept failing at other types of movies, and she said that when she first started, Hollywood felt more male-dominated than ever. Many things she could do, but the business world already knew where she fit, and she kept running into the same problem. Her work was in chaos, and she never talked about the problems her body was having. For over 11 years, she had to deal with endometriosis and cysts in her ovaries. The pain made me tired, gave me acid reflux, and made me feel bad all the time. After a cyst got dangerous in 2008, she had to have surgery right away to remove one of her ovaries. Her remaining ovary kept getting cysts, so she had to be checked on often. When I was diagnosed with endometriosis in 2019, it caused me more pain, bloating, and doubt. Having children didn't help. It made her less fertile. She kept working through the pain and didn't tell anyone about it until her insurance company wouldn't pay for it anymore. Then she had to talk. She sued the SAG-AFTRA health plan in September 2020 because they wouldn't pay for her therapy. She had been putting money into the plan for years, but after 2016, her claims were tagged as being about infertility. Even though the treatments were meant to keep people from getting cancer and hormone problems. She asked for ultrasounds and treatments many times between 2017 and 2020, but each time she was turned down. A review from an OB/GYN who did not want to be named supported the denial. She thought the choice was not only wrong, but also dangerous. She stood up and said she was going to sue because she thought she was being treated unfairly. Not just for herself, but for all women who are going through the same thing. She said she was sick of people ignoring women's health. She spoke out about something that affected a lot of people, and many women backed her up for doing so. Her problems getting pregnant got worse over time. In 2008, she lost one ovary and had to deal with cysts in the other. This made her future uncertain. She tried to keep her body safe and her chances of becoming a mother. But each claim that was turned down made it harder. She wanted to have a family, and each failure hurt her emotionally as well as physically. The fight with her insurance company made the journey even worse because she was going up against both her own body and the system that was supposed to help her. In 2018, she met Philip Schneider on a blind date set up by friends. This was another big change in her life. They got together at 10 a.m. that they stayed together until 11 o'clock at night because they felt so connected. After years of broken hearts, she was surprised by how easy that day was. After a few months, they got married. She was married to Chad Lowe for a long time, from 1997 to 2007, and then had a string of relationships that never ended. This one made her feel calm in a way she hadn't in years. It was love at first sight, she said. And said it felt like the gift she didn't expect. Being a mother came late, but it had its own magic. In October 2022, she told Good Morning America that she was expecting twins. At age 37, she frozen her eggs, and now that she is 47, she is finally pregnant. When she was 48 years old, on April 10, 2023, she had INOM. There were a lot of risks and problems during pregnancy, but both babies were born healthy. She said that the trip was like a marathon and that each step taught her to be patient and in the present. She was happy with the changes her body was going through and smiled when she talked about how happy she was to be a mother. In October 2025, her happiness faded again when her rescue dog, Kai, died suddenly. She was very upset about the loss. Kai had been with her through a lot of changes in her life. She got him from a school in the San Fernando Valley and made him a part of her story as soon as she brought him home. In an online tribute, she wrote that the death was sudden and surreal. She talked about how sweet he was and how he had been there for her through all of her biggest changes. Fans from all over the world wrote to her to tell her how much he meant to them. Soon after, in December 2025, she was back in the uncomfortable spotlight. On December 10, she was at LAX and saw a woman named Jada Bafus holding a phone. She thought the woman was taking pictures of her twins. Swank yelled at her and turned to leave. In the end, she found out that the woman wasn't really filming her. For a Make-A-Wish trip to Disneyland, Jada took her two sons, Mason, 7, and Jack, 4, who were both very sick and would not live. Swank said she was sorry in public once she knew what had happened. Jada said she understood that celebrities were always under a lot of pressure and accepted the apology. A lot of people talked about privacy, stress, and kindness after that event. But things got better when both women said they understood what the other was going through.